Most YouTube contributors seem to totally misunderstand wilderness shelter requirements, with many so-called survival shelter videos giving the misleading impression that such makeshift structures alone can save your life. When in fact the absolute most critical form of shelter is your clothing, including proper rain gear. Unlike a hastily built lean-to, clothing provides immediate and consistent protection, making it far more reliable in harsh conditions. It is essential to wear and carry clothing that can keep you warm and dry in the worst possible weather, especially when resting or sleeping, as the body produces less heat during these periods. Have fun outdoors and build a shelter, but even a well-constructed lean-to shelter has very little to do with real survival, which to me means saving one's life. If not, it's just camping. This structure isn't windproof or waterproof. What happens if the wind changes and blows rain or snow in after wasting time and energy building it? I understand using the word survival will get you more likes and views on YouTube, but this shelter, to me, is just the opposite, especially with its somewhat unstable rock wall. In an open shelter, the benefits are hard to quantify due to all the variables, but are quite limited. Your clothing and a fire in front play a much larger part in your comfort or survivability. Unfortunately, far too often not much thought goes into building these heavy wood structures where a heavy wet snow load would add considerable extra weight on the crossbeam, which is positioned on the wrong side of the trees with no vertical support. Insulating your body from the ground is crucial in any shelter system, whether using natural materials or a sleeping pad. Now, let's move on to something that actually works, like tarp shelters. These are much more practical and effective. They're windproof, waterproof, easy to set up in various configurations, and lightweight to carry. Just rolling yourself up in a tarp or wrapping it around you is effective, but condensation can be a problem. There are lots of pros and cons to a tarp regarding material, weight, and shape. A square or rectangular tarp does somewhat affect the tarp design setup. The lean-to style shelter is a very easy setup, but obviously not at all good with changing wind directions, although it can easily be flipped in the opposite direction. The plow point setup is my favorite setup because you get great coverage from a small tarp on 3 sides with a very fast setup time. It is a much better option for a longer stay. Another option is the hammock and tarp. As with most things, it has its pluses and minuses. On the plus side, setup is quite fast, and the slope or condition of the ground underneath is not important. Some hammocks come with a bug screen and an attached tarp, which makes for a fast setup. The minuses are a little extra weight, and an underquilt or extra insulation is needed for cold weather. For a good night's rest, you either love them or hate them, and as a side sleeper, they are not for me. The super shelter made popular by Morse Kahansky is simply the addition of 2 lightweight materials to a lean-to shelter. The first is clear plastic, like a painter's drop sheet, that should always be carried as part of one's kit, as it has many uses. The clear plastic allows radiant heat from a fire into the shelter and retains it while keeping wind and smoke out. The addition of reflective material like a space blanket inside the shelter reflects heat back onto the person inside. I have used this system myself, and it works incredibly well with a simple tarp lean-to shelter setup. Bivy sacks have been used by the military for a long time before becoming somewhat popular with recreational users. Their low profile is an obvious advantage for the army or anyone who does not want to be noticed, plus the low profile is an advantage in extreme windy conditions. I have no personal experience with bivy bags, simply because for just a little extra weight, a one-man tent is much more practical and less susceptible to condensation buildup. Spending time in the outdoors, even in adverse conditions, doesn't mean you have to be huddled up under a tree in a so-called survival situation. A tent is by far the best solution without doubt, and one I have used for years. Modern tents are lightweight and can easily be set up where no natural shelter-making materials exist. Tents are the ultimate shelter, especially in extreme weather conditions, and provide a better night's sleep when mosquitoes and other insects are a problem. The obvious advantages of hot tenting are offset by the extra weight of a larger tent and the wood stove. This usually means that the extra weight is conveyed by sled, motorized vehicles, or pack horses. A big traditional canvas wall tent that's used in hunting camps is extremely heavy. The 3 key points are: clothes are your most important shelter system. Lean-to shelters made with natural materials are very time-consuming and not the most effective shelter, and you should never be in the wilderness without a tarp or tent.
it's alright, it's okay. Doesn't really matter if you're old and gray. It's alright, I say it's okay.